Great. Okay, it's being live streamed. Sounds like a plan. So many good basketball games going on right now. It feels like every single one's coming down to the wire, except for the ones that the Hoosiers play, except for the St. John's game. Looks like we are ready to roll. Well, Hoosier Nation, Thanksgiving is around the corner. When you listen to this, it'll probably be Thanksgiving or maybe the day after when you're in a food coma. IU basketball, high five for the Hoosiers. That's the title of the episode for a reason. The Hoosiers have started off 5-0 tonight on episode 227 of the Hoosiers Sound. Matt and I are going to dive into what's been the key to IU's stellar defensive start and so much more here on the Hoosiers Sound, where we are the official podcast of Indiana HQ. Tonight, I am joined by my normal co-host, Matt Lukens. Matt, 3 games have happened since our last episode. IU beat St. John's, IU beat Louisiana, and IU beat Jackson State. The defense has keyed all 3 wins. I'm just going to ask you point blank. Are you surprised at how good this defense is right now? And what's been the key?
Yeah, I'm very surprised that, again, look, this is a team that's a new head coach. He wrote 5 games into his new tenure. I remember 5 games into the Archie Miller tenure, our defense looked like, how do I put this nicely? Terrible.
Manure.
Yes, it was awful. And so this has taken quite a turn from the previous regime. And then you also add in the fact that, look, that Archie Miller team didn't start too many transfers. Like, most of the guys were holdovers from the previous Crean regime. And they had already been in the program. So they had a little bit of chemistry together. That we're starting 3 transfers, 2 of which were not in the program like 6 months ago. So, there's a lot of moving pieces, and so far all the pieces have aligned fantastically. And I would say the reason that it's working well is because they have bought into Woodson saying that they need to play hard. And that's all that is. That's literally all it is. Because college players can play the game, and they're always playing hard. I'm never saying that anybody isn't playing hard, because, look, they're playing against some of the best basketball players on the planet, even though they're still in college. They're really good at what they do. So nobody can go out there and just, go on airplane mode. But they're not, they're on save battery, right? On a lot of possessions. I've turned on that yellow portion of your battery saver. Close, boxing out on rebounds. Something that we still need to work on, by the way, but I think that's more of a scheme thing than it is lack of trying. You can cut some corners boxing out. You can maybe be a little bit slow to figuring out where the ball is going. Maybe you're slacking a little bit off your guy.
And it's only game 6, right?
And you're playing Jackson State, who's 0-4 at home 2 days before Thanksgiving. And you don't actually have, I'm pretty sure IU could have played this game with one hand. Each player had to pick one hand to play the game with, and we might have still have one. But the intensity that they play defense with is what we're proud of, and is what is making this defense so fantastic so far.
Look, you can point out that Jackson State is not a good opponent, but I'm a numbers guy, Matt. Indiana was a 22-point favorite against Jackson State. Okay, that stuff is a pretty appropriate barometer for what the expectation was in that game. And Indiana won by 35. Okay, yes. Jackson State played Illinois at the start of the season, only lost by 24 against Indiana.
Illinois
lost
bad
by 35. By the way, I'd like to just point out, on our podcast a couple weeks ago, I said I wasn't sure that Illinois was just going to right the ship. That loss against Marquette to start the season was rough, but we're not talking about Illinois anymore. Look, Indiana's got the number 1 defense in the country when it comes to opposing field goal percentage and opponents' effective field goal percentage. And I've always said in life, Matt, if you're number 1 at anything, or if you're 100% at anything, Doesn't matter how easy the schedule is, all right? It means you're doing something right. It means you're doing something well. Now, Ken Pom does work the schedule into it, and even in his system, Indiana rates as the 10th strongest defense in the country right now when you adjust for tempo and you adjust for schedule. So all in all, it's been a great start for the Hoosiers. How about the block shots, man? I mean, this has been a revelation because the last handful of seasons, Indiana has had long, athletic, dynamic players. But then you go look at the steals and the blocks on the stat sheet and they're not there.
Yeah,
Indiana's finally making an impact on that level, especially Trace Jackson Davis. I absolutely love to see it.
Well, Trace is taking a step up, not offensively, but defensively, especially this year. I think that's where he's probably made the most improvement. I think that's what Woodson said to him. And he was like, look, you can go to the NBA and they can fix you. You are not Ben Simmons, right? Your jump shot is not broken beyond all fixing, right? And so it's my job to get you to the next level. And honestly, the next level isn't going to care too much about you not having a jump shot if you could do a couple things that they can't teach you, right? And they can't teach effort. I heard this on the assembly call, and I completely agree. By the way, thank you, IU Basketball, for being good again, because then it makes me want to listen to like podcasts, which makes it so much easier. I'm like going around making some Uber Eats money because then I have something to do and listen to a podcast. Fantastic, by the way. Go check out all the other IU podcasts along with ours. They do great stuff. We do a little bit different stuff than they do, and that's why we have a bit of our own niche. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but we all work together on this. We're friends. So, look, teach effort, right? And Trace has been relentless, and he's not there. There's like a mentality to your effort, right? There's a factor that counts at the end of the day when you do effort. It's do you demand for things because you do effort, or are you rewarded because of your effort, right? You can hurt a team by producing a ton of effort, like let's say on the defensive end, right? Mm-hmm. And then forcing up shots on the other end because you feel like you deserve to get the shot. This last game, Trace only had 6-7 shots maybe in the entire game, which is maybe the lowest amount he should have in total. Yeah, he had 7 shots. He went 5 of 7 from the field. He should be averaging 11 shots. By the way, Miller Kopp took 11. Like, these roles should be reversed. And Trace wasn't out there forcing things, even though on the defensive end, he is working his butt off.
Yeah.
To close out the lane, block shots, deny post feeds. He's doing everything in his power to play defense on that end and be a rock on that end. And he's not demanding for the ball on the other end. And that's a good teammate. And that's something in the NBA when he's going to get there. He's not going to be the best player on his team when he's in the NBA. He's just not. He's been the best player on his team since basically high school, but he will not be. But he will always put in the effort, and he doesn't need to get rewarded for it. And that's something that NBA teams will look at and be salivating about.
And Trace knows, right? He's been through this now for 2 years. Trace Jackson Davis knows he wants to play his best when the games matter the most, right? Yeah. January, and then more so in February, and then even more so, as I'm sure all Hoosier fans are hoping and praying, in March. So look, it's not like he's slacking off, right? 16-8, 3 and change blocks per game. And I remember you even mentioned this in our season preview podcast, Matt. If Trace Jackson Davis doesn't have to be Batman, right? Yeah. Everything is probably going well for Indiana. And so far, everything has been going well. Again, the blocks thing, though, to me, right? Like, if Indiana wants to intimidate some of these non-conference teams, if Indiana wants to put something frightening on film for Big Ten coaches, Trace Jackson Davis and Race Thompson and Michael Durr and even guards blocking shots into the first or second row at Assembly Hall, that's making a difference. Indiana just didn't do that. Last year, Indiana had 101 blocks the entire season. They already have 36. It's the 11th highest number in the country right now. And IU's not winning by finesse necessarily. Yeah. They're winning by doing the concrete, tangible things that talented players can do to win basketball games. And that's what's great to see. Of course, Indiana, the last 2 games, especially, have done a remarkable job on that side of the court when you consider that they allowed just 44 points against Louisiana and just 35 points against Jackson State. I feel like we see football teams, not so much Indiana necessarily, but football teams across the country give up more than 44 and 35 pretty frequently. I think I saw UCLA put up like 60 against USC on Saturday. So not only that, Indiana setting records, right? Indiana had the lowest field goal percentage allowed in Indiana history, or at least the last 25 years, according to the school, when they beat the Ragin' Cajuns back on November 21st, back on Sunday night. And then against Jackson State, they were close to beating that record that they had just set. Of course, Jackson State knocked down a few buckets there in garbage time to make sure that record stayed safe. Although, when you look at the Jackson State game, IU allowed just 35 points, even less than what they did against Louisiana. And by the way, this Louisiana team, pretty good. Okay, I think when we fast forward in about 4 months, a Louisiana team that we made fun of when we watched them on Sunday night. Of course, not everyone could watch them because volleyball took up, it felt like, the first 10 minutes of the first half of Louisiana game. But Louisiana is a team that's going to contend in a decent basketball conference in the Sun Belt. And I'm looking forward to seeing what they do going forward here. But turnovers have been a concern, Matt. Indiana had 27 of them against Louisiana. Mike Woodson has gained some fame in a way for saying that not only does the team have to run if IU turns the ball over more than 12 times, he's got to run a little bit at Assembly Hall. And he was saying that in that first half against Jackson State, they're starting to tremble on the sideline as IU, I think, gave it away 8 times in the first 10 or 12 minutes before figuring that out. Yeah. Is there anything you're seeing as far as the turnover issue for Indiana right now? It's the main thing that's plaguing this team. Is it stuff that is correctable, or will this be a problem for IU the rest of the season?
I think there's 2 things that they mainly do. One is a problem. One is not a problem. The problem is that they're getting rushed, and they're getting rushed by inferior teams. So if teams want to press them, kind of get them to quicken the pace on offense, have to move at a high rate of speed to set up stuff. They've shown that there's going to be lapses in judgment anyways when that happens. That's why those defenses work in college basketball. But IU's had a bit of a tough time against that. Again, St. John's did it against us a lot. So did Louisiana. They did it to us a lot. It was just tough. The second thing, some guys are making some boneheaded decisions. I'm not going to lie. There's a couple passes from Race Thompson, who I've seen him play very well so far this year. We've been very complimentary of him so far on this podcast. There was a pass last night that he made in transition when he had 2 guys wide open on each wing, and he tried to force it into trace into 3 people. It made no sense. So there's passes like that, which to me, you go into the film room and go, bruh, what are you doing? And then there's other passes where you go, okay, look, like X, you were too fast getting up the court. The guys weren't set, and the defense kind of read where you're going to pass the ball. That's more of an issue, but that can be easily fixed. And the other thing can also be easily fixed, which guys just make the right play and not try to overthink stuff. And I think in that play, especially Race was overthinking things.
Yeah, and by the way, I see Eric in the live chat calling me out for picking St. John's over Indiana last week.
Yeah.
Look, first of all,
wait a minute.
Hold on 1 sec. That was a nail biter. All right, let's not get let's not get arrogant. Okay, first of all, St. John's covered, and Indiana, that game came down to the last play. Fortunately for Hoosier Nation, IU was able to come away with the win. They're back on Wednesday. I look at the turnover problem. I like some of the turnovers that are being committed, but I also hate some of the turnovers that are being committed. I remember one play, I believe it was Christian Lander trying to make an aggressive pass down the court in a fast break scenario, just out of the reach of the player going down the middle of the court. Ball went out of bounds. That's something you say, okay, tweak it, fix it, get it back.
It was a good play, though. That's a really good play.
Good play, good decision. fix that. Hey, when you play Michigan State in Big Ten play, that's a way you can steal.
Those.
You can steal a couple of easy points. But on the other hand, right, you saw what was it, a 10-second violation or 5-second violation?
Yes. On the inbounds.
On the inbounds play. I mean, what are we doing? Right.
Yes.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. I understand transfers are coming in, but these are all experienced basketball players by and large, except for the true freshmen. It's not true freshmen that are making these mistakes. So Indiana, I think what I do like is that there is a quantifiable goal that Mike Woodson's going after. I think too often you hear coaches say, we got to limit turnovers. We got to keep them down. You know, it's not good. It's undisciplined if we give the ball away too much. But Mike Woodson's not saying Indiana needs to commit 0 turnovers a game.
Right.
Mike Woodson's saying 12. And the reason he's saying 12 is because in his basketball experience, he's realized that you're going to turn the ball over some if you play aggressively, and if you play quick, and if you play at the level that you want to play basketball at. But some of the ridiculous ones can be cut out and get the Hoosiers to that 12 mark. Right now, through 5 games, they're averaging 15.4 per game. So hopefully you can get that number down so Mike Woodson doesn't have to be running back and forth at Assembly Hall. Although if anyone can get footage of that, that's an NFT that I think people will buy up very, very quickly. The last thing here in our first segment I wanted to bring up is that the strength of schedule has been puny through 5 games. I mean, St. John's has been the toughest opponent. They were a 6-point underdog or so when they came into Bloomington. Is this basketball that you're seeing here, how sustainable is it? I mean, what happens when IU plays tougher opponents? And by the way, the Syracuse game that's on the schedule for Tuesday night, maybe not as difficult as we originally thought. Syracuse dropped a game to Colgate at home on Saturday. They dropped the first game in the Bahamas to VCU, a team that lost to Wagner earlier this season. Again, a team that, you know, it's not the Shaka Smart era VCU Rams anymore. What happens when the schedule gets tougher, Matt?
Yeah, some of these shots that we've been able to make and take are going to be taken away. I mean, some defensive lapses on teams just leading to open threes, not going to be there consistently in Big Ten play. There's a great out of bounds play.
I know what you're talking about.
In the last game that Woodson called out that got Parker Stewart an open 3, and Race was the one that assisted on that. And it was in the zone. So I think a lot of the stuff we're seeing will carry over. I think the defensive effort will. I don't think teams are going to have a hard time getting by the guys anymore in Big Ten play. There's going to be breakdowns, and that's going to be on Trace and Race to maybe swallow a few more fouls than they might want to. And that's when somebody like Michael Durr getting up to speed is going to be extremely helpful. But other than that, like, our offense is coming along pretty well, and has been growing the last 5 games. Like, I feel like I've seen significant improvement from the Eastern Michigan game to last game. Now, albeit again, people might say, well, it was Jackson State now. Yeah, Jackson State is atrocious at basketball. But it doesn't matter. The sets you're running, the way the players are playing, the people that are taking the shots, much better than the Eastern Michigan game. Like, Jordan Geronimo wasn't out there chucking up threes like he was against Eastern Michigan. Like, I still remember that Jordan, who had, by the way, a fantastic week. I mean, like, as far as a list of Hoosiers that had a great week, like, Jordan Geronimo is like maybe 1B up there. He's had a fantastic week for himself. But their offense and defense side of the ball, I really like what I'm seeing. I think it is replicable. Now, some of the Big Ten teams are going to take advantage of us. Mainly Purdue is going to destroy us. I was listening to a podcast today. They asked a question like, what was the percentage of us beating Purdue? And they gave, like, I think, like, it was like 40 something percent. And to that, I say, what are you watching? Because I give us like a 4% chance that we beat Purdue this year. Like that team is ridiculous. And their size really counters. Like, I don't care that Durr is 7 feet tall. Like, nobody can match up against 7'4" Zach Edey, who has the legs of an oak tree. Like, it's that human is not fair. So there's going to be some teams where Ali's going to drop to. I don't think Maryland is as bad as they've shown throughout this year. I think, the Trojan teams usually pick it up during the Big Ten, but depending on the matchup, I think it's very sustainable. And then there's obviously going to be some games where our style of play is going to come back to bite us. I think Purdue might be one of those.
Yeah, and I mean, let's face it, Purdue has separated themselves from everyone else in the Big Ten.
Almost everybody else in the country, by the way.
Yeah. No kidding. Gonzaga, right? I mean, Gonzaga is probably the one other. Gonzaga, absolutely. You're 100% right. The way I would answer this question is, obviously things will, you'll have much less margin for error against tougher teams here, especially when you get into Big Ten play. But Syracuse, not as hard as we thought they were going to be. Notre Dame, not as good as we thought they were going to be. The Big Ten, not as good as we thought they were going to be. I think a lot of this is sustainable. And if you head over to KenPom right now, don't look now, but Indiana's projected to win 15 of their first 16 games.
Yep.
Indiana's projected to start this season essentially 15-1, with the only game that I use an underdog is a road game in Wisconsin in December, and no one is of course, and that would be a loss. That would be a loss regardless of Indiana having Archie Miller coaching, or Tom Crean coaching, or Mike Davis coaching, or Mike Woodson coaching. So I think a lot of this is sustainable just from a fact that who are you afraid of in this conference? Purdue, I wouldn't be afraid of Michigan. Seton Hall went into Michigan and won. I wouldn't be afraid of Michigan State. Michigan State was a nail biter against Loyola today. The rest of am I wrong?
Yeah, you're wrong. I think Michigan is better than they've been playing. I think once they figure out their point guard situation, if they can ever get that figured out, they're going to be much, much better. And I think
fine. Put Michigan. Yeah, let's put Michigan in. Are you afraid of Ohio State? You're afraid of who?
I would say I think that for the 3 or 4 teams that are better than IU right now is Purdue. I think Michigan will be better. I think Ohio State will be better. And I'll still say this. I'm still on the Illinois train. I still think Illinois is a better team than IU, even though they've played like nothing like what we thought they would going into the year, like the complete polar opposite of what we thought they would be going into this year. I still think they'll figure it out. So I still think IU's maybe in that 5th to 6th range, but I could see a world in which IU's like the 2nd or 3rd best team in the Big Ten. However, again, St. John's almost lost at home to, I think, what was it? St. Francis, New York, Brooklyn. Yeah. Right. Like these, like St. John's might be a good team, but I'm not quite sold on them yet. And I'm not quite sold on IU either. Like I want to see us play against Syracuse, right? First true road game. How does the team respond? Like, and if we start 15 of 16, right, with our schedule, which we should, I think I predict us to go like 12-3 or 13-2 anyways, to start the year. Like if we go 15 of, let's say we go 16, because I think we can beat Wisconsin. Like let's say we go 16-0. This team has not had any adversity at all up until that point.
Yeah.
And what happens when we get our first loss? Because it's not if we're going to lose, it's when we're going to lose. This is not, we're not Gonzaga right now. Like, I would love for this program to get to that point again. That'd be fantastic.
We got to move to the West Coast Conference. That's
I know. But look, this team could use some adversity. So I don't think it'd be the end of the world if we went to Syracuse. Look, Syracuse had a disappointing start of the year and we lose, because then the team can bounce back and show the ability. Like, all right, look, we sucked that game. Syracuse plays a janky zone. They're cheaters. Jim Boeheim sucks. Move on to the next game. We can move on. That's fine. I would like to see that, because I'm afraid that from seasons past, we've seen a pattern, which is that the team starts off well, gets 7 or 8 wins out of the first 9 or 10 games. And then it's like off a cliff when they get into like about 5 games at the Big Ten schedule. I would much rather reach the cliff now and not have that much of a drop off, and hopefully start climbing again so that we are peaking come tournament time in March.
Yeah, absolutely. Big picture, I can see this defense maybe take a step back. Of course, what'll have to happen is the offense picking up the slack a little bit, learning more about each other, learning more under Mike Woodson and Dane Fife and Kenya Hunter and Yasir Rosemond, and making sure that they steal a few extra points here over the course of the remainder of the season. I think it was a great point about the adversity. Indiana's not only going to lose this season, they're going to lose consecutive games. It's going to be that kind of thing where, okay, how does the team respond now after they fall in a non-conference game or a Big Ten game? That's really what the measuring stick is for all Big Ten teams. It's time for Who Won the Week this past week in IU sports. And hey, we've got to shout out the IU men's soccer team. They've advanced to the round of 16 in the NCAA soccer tournament. They knocked off Bowling Green 2-0 last weekend. Indiana had a bit of a rough start to the season, but they're picking it up at the perfect time. They made it to the Big Ten tournament final, and now they've advanced to the Sweet 16 in the NCAA men's soccer tournament. Home win. That's always nice to get that NCAA tournament win in Bloomington. Victor Becerra and Spencer Glass found the back of the net. Now the Hoosiers hit the road, go all the way to Seattle to take on the University of Washington in the round of 16. It should be an absolute belter of a match Saturday night. So you watch IU basketball, knock off Marshall, and then bang, you can flip over, or even a second screen action to watch IU men's soccer take on Washington on Saturday and see if the Hoosiers can make it to the Elite Eight. If you would like to subscribe to our podcast for free, all you have to do is search for the Hoosier Sound wherever you listen to podcasts. Stay up to date with all of our information by following us on Twitter at Indiana HQ, as well as at the Hoosier Sound. This part is important. If you enjoy our show, leave us a review, tell a friend, share our links. Your support really helps us grow this podcast and reach more passionate IU fans such as yourself. So, Matt, we've watched 3 games over the course of the past week. Let's play a little game, okay? I'm going to ask you for an offensive player of the week, a defensive player of the week, and an intangibles player of the week. So let's start with offense, okay? Obviously, Trace Jackson Davis leads the team in scoring. Yep. You can go with him if you want, but as you look back on these past 3 games, who has impressed you on the offensive side of the ball, and who wins your Thanksgiving week offensive player of the week award for IU men's basketball?
It's a combination of the 3 games. So I'm going to go with Xavier Johnson as my offensive player of the week, because I think he had the best offensive performance last game. He didn't have a great defensive performance, but he looked much better offensively against Louisiana. And then I thought he was a very important piece of that St. John's win. So I'm going to give it to Xavier Johnson. I think what he's brought to this team, look, he's a bit sporadic on offense, and he's a bit of he's a bit of a fiery guy on defense, picking up a tactical.
Yeah, got that. Jeez, yeah.
But I like that. And so I appreciate what he brings to the team, because it's very different than Rob Finney, right? Like, no offense to Rob, but Rob's not about to get up in a guy's grill.
Very different, yeah.
And push him for just leaving his hand on him too long. Like that's not Rob's MO. Rob's gonna forget that it even happened 2 seconds later. And then obviously we haven't seen enough about Christian Lang to see what even he is. But I like what I get out of Xavier Johnson. And then I think he brings something this program hasn't had. So he gets my offensive player of the week.
Yeah, and I like some of the comments being made in the live chat right now. Make sure you drop them in the YouTube live stream either tonight or every Tuesday night whenever we do this podcast, unless there's an IU men's basketball game like next week and like this past week and like the week before. So actually no, St. John's game is on Wednesday. I take that back.
Yes.
But whenever we have these live YouTube streams, make sure you throw in your comments and questions in the live chat. Eric says he's surprised that Rob Finney hasn't really stepped up that much even before he got hurt. That's where your point makes a lot of sense there, Matt. Indiana fans are just seeing a completely different personality at point guard right now.
Yes.
You're seeing a guy who's going to run his head full speed into a wall, metaphorically, to make something happen.
Yes.
I mean, Johnson picked up the technical against Louisiana. Johnson pulled down 7 rebounds in tight spaces against Jackson State. His career high was 8. Johnson's able to hit the occasional 3-pointer, make those key assists when he has to play defense, although we haven't really seen IU take on a really quality point guard. Even Julian Champagny at St. John's, he's just such a unique basketball player. We'll see maybe some more out of Xavier Johnson coming up here against Marshall and Syracuse. Sure. I also like the comment here from Tim. In fact, it's a question. Do you think we could see a meteoric rise similar to that of Victor Oladipo from Jordan Geronimo? I don't think it's fair to expect anything like Victor Oladipo. What Victor Oladipo and even OG Anunoby did at Indiana is an unbelievably incredible story.
Yes.
It really is. I mean, you rarely see one of those every 15, 20, 30 years. Never mind 2 in a 4-year window, something like that. I think what Jordan Geronimo's got to focus right now, what his focus needs to be right now is just keep listening to what Mike Woodson and the assistants are telling him, like Geronimo's been doing so far. He has steadily improved throughout the course of the season. I've really liked what I've seen from him the last few games. You look at the numbers against Jackson State, 6 points, 8 rebounds, better decision-making. He was an impact player against St. John's and Louisiana as well. In fact, I thought he and Lander in the second half were the difference in the game. Their minutes, their 2-3 minute stretch allowed Indiana to get the extra second wind to push them beyond St. John's in that victory. And that's the kind of stuff Jordan Geronimo has to do. My offensive player of the week is Parker Stewart, Matt, your guy. Okay.
And my guy.
Because I know Trace Jackson Davis, obviously he's the alpha on this team, but man, I have never felt more comfortable seeing the ball leave a guy's hands since Jordan Hulls in an IU uniform than Parker Stewart.
The disrespect to Nick Zeisloft in that statement, unbelievable.
I get it, but I'm just saying, if through the small sample that I've seen so far, I'll probably revisit this in 2 months. But against Louisiana, for example, this guy came out guns a-blazing, 4 for 5 beyond the arc, and it wasn't just a one-off situation. 3 of 5 following it up against Jackson State. We've talked on this episode about Indiana finding ways to improve their offense. I think drawing up plays, scheming up things for Parker Stewart to get shots coming out of timeouts, or just installing 2 or 3 more things in the playbook. That's something Indiana can do, and I'm looking forward to seeing them do over the course of the next few weeks. You better believe against Syracuse, a team that Parker Stewart has already dropped 20 against in his career, he's going to be a very important player. Do not be surprised if Parker Stewart takes at least 8 threes against Syracuse in that zone, because teams just do that. Colgate shot, I think, 35 or 40 threes against Syracuse. And that's how they put up 100 points on the Orange. Parker Stewart has scored
a lot of threes.
Yeah, sometimes that's the key to victory, especially a team like Colgate. They can't ground and pound inside against Syracuse anyway. So Stewart, especially though, you think about the 16 points he scored against Louisiana, followed up with 9 more against Jackson State. Love what I'm seeing out of him. How about the defensive player of the week for you, Matt? Obviously, a lot of candidates. Indiana's defense has been really good throughout the entire season. Who wins your IU defensive player of the week?
Trace. Yeah. Easy. I mean, the guy is the reason why our defense is so good in the first place. His shot blocking ability is like a anti-magnet against the basket. Like you saw it in the Louisiana game. Those guys, look, Jackson State, that's one thing, right? Like those guys, basketball ability, meh, for this level. Louisiana's got some guys. All right. Like Louisiana's not a bad team. We will look back on that game as a very good victory, especially for like how much we won it, but also about who we won it against, and made it look so easy against, because they're going to be at the top of their conference and contending for an NCAA spot at the end of the year. Those guys looked like they were terrified to lay up the ball, because Trace literally has this like magnetic field around the rim that he's created, where if you put up a layup in there that's not inch perfect, he is swatting it 3 rows deep, or he's swatting it good enough that one of our guys is getting the rebound and we're scoring on you on the other end. Like Trace is what is the engine to this machine. He's without him, this team is absolutely nothing. Like, especially on the defensive end. On the offensive end, like I feel like they could find a way to make this team work. I think there's enough players that have some offensive ability that would be fine. But defensively, he's irreplaceable. So to me, it's Trace. Easy.
Yeah, no, I can't dispute that all too much. I mean, he's been outstanding, and it's not even the blocks. Obviously, the blocks have been a huge part of what Trace Jackson Davis has done this season, but it's also the shots affected. You know, I don't know if there's anyone that tracks that number, but and you mentioned it's not even him actually contacting the basketball with his hand. It's guys who are afraid of him swatting their shot into the fifth row. So all of a sudden the floaters and the layups become a lot more difficult, and you settle for awkward mid-range jumpers. And Trace has absolutely affected the game in that way. I'm going to tip my cap to Race Thompson. You know, in a secondary kind of way, he's done things that, he's filled in whatever gaps that Trace Jackson Davis couldn't. There are a lot of candidates to choose from here. I like the fact, especially that Race Thompson is getting those steals and blocks. I put so much emphasis on that. I know there's a abstract component to defense where you can be in the right spot and still do your job, and you can time things right and communicate. I like seeing the steals and the blocks. Okay. Especially someone like Trace. I didn't think the numbers were high enough last year or the year before. He's already off to a good start, recording 7 steals, 5 blocks to this point in the season. And in addition to doing those little things that we talked about a minute ago. Now, this is a spot where we can have a little fun. The Intangibles player of the week. Obviously not somebody who grabs the headlines, Trace Jackson Davis, Race Thompson, this, that, whatever. Intangibles player of the week. Who do you got? Who do you have?
I like your pick that you're going to reveal here in a bit. But my pick for me is Anthony Leal.
Yeah.
Because he's a guy who I look back, I don't remember him playing like 8 minutes a game last year, but apparently he did. I don't remember when that happened, but I guess I apparently was sleepwalking through that. But look, as a guy that projected going into this year at being damn near at the bottom of the guard rotation, right? Because there's so many guys that came in above him with more experience, a slightly more mature skill set. And you're thinking, is he going to play at all? And look, he didn't even play. I don't think he played against Eastern Michigan at all.
You're right.
So I'm thinking, like, is he going to even see the floor? Or is he redshirting? Has come on the last couple of games, and albeit it's been in garbage time and maybe a little bit towards the end of the first half in a couple of the games when we're up like 15 already, has looked great. I don't think defense has been a problem. I thought he's been one of the better defenders when he's out there. He's a 3-point sniper. He's like shooting 60% on the year. It's like, okay, why isn't he playing more? And I think the reason why he's not playing more, to answer the rhetorical question that I just came up and brought up, is that he doesn't have enough experience yet, and the coaching staff doesn't trust him in big situations yet. It's much easier to let him loose against Jackson State when you're up 15 than it is to put him in the game against St. John's when it's a close game, even though he did see a lot of playing time in that game. He's somebody that I'm looking at. Look, good bench mentality, obviously is good friends with the guys, hometown kid, and is somebody I'm pegging to get more playing time against teams like Syracuse. We're going to need guys that can go and spread the floor. So to me, like, he hasn't I mean, obviously I don't have enough information to say he's been putting up a fuss about not getting playing time, but to me, knowing the kid's character and watching him and basically scouting him since he's been in high school when he's in Bloomington, like I know he's just being a good bench guy. So for me, he's the intangible guy of the week because he's just sitting there at the end of the bench waiting to come in. And when he comes in, he does his job, and he's been fantastic. So go Anthony Leal.
And I also remember seeing a play against Jackson State where Parker Stewart was taking an open three. And even though Stewart missed it, Leal, as the shot went up, as you see the Warriors bench do when Steph Curry shoots the three, Leal's first one on his feet, just going, that ball's going in, that ball's going on. And then, when Stewart missed it, he goes, shucks. And, it's like, having that energy, positive energy on the sideline when you're not in the game, that's great. And of course, he's looked good in his minutes so far. We talk about tangible stuff. Leal is tied for 4th on the team in 3-point makes through 5 games this season. He's got 3 triples. So does Xavier Johnson, for example. My intangibles player, there are a lot of guys you can go with. I was really close to giving it to Christian Lander. And Lander is somebody we are going to give this award to at some point the rest of the season, or at least point this out over the course of this season, because Lander, I've already said, was a key to Indiana's win against St. John's, and he was really good, by far the best game of his career against Louisiana. But I would be remiss if I did not shout out the walk-on Nate Childress from Zionsville High School. He looked like he fit on the court. He looks coordinated. He looks competent. This isn't a fan favorite type of scenario where a guy looks completely out of his league, out of his element. In the games that Nate Childress has played so far, he's pulled down 5 rebounds. He's hit a triple. He's got more rebounds on the season than I believe a couple of rotation Hoosiers. He's got more rebounds than Anthony Leal, more than Rob Finnessy or Logan Duncombe. Obviously, those guys haven't played all that much, but they're scholarship guys who have seen minutes this year. The 3-pointer was nothing but net. It was sweet. Louisiana. By no means am I clamoring for more playing time for Nathan Childress, but obviously this is the time in the year when you're going to see walk-ons get minutes on the court, and we've got to point him out. So shout out Nate Childress.
Yeah, and he's somebody that we've heard about right in the program as a walk-on. They're like, hey, he can play. Like, I don't know what you guys think about walk-ons, right? Like, this is not we're not making fun of Tim Priller here, but like he might be better than Tim Priller was at IU, and Tim Priller was a scholarship player. Love you, Tim. But and some players work out, some players don't, some players stick around, and Nathan Childress stuck around as a walk-on, and he's one of the guys. I mean, like, yeah, you saw Trace on Twitter. We haven't done our social media shout out. We didn't have much this week for it, but Trace was like laughing about Childress getting the 3-point. He was all excited about it. Like, that's cool to me, and that's a really good team atmosphere. And I'm really proud that IU is being able to show that off. Like, I don't know how the team atmosphere has been under Archie's, past couple of years, but they haven't been as verbal and vocal and blatant about it as they have been under the Woodson era. And it's a lot of, honestly, makes it more fun as a fan to root for them. Like, it's just easy.
Absolutely, without a doubt. There is a palpable energy with this team that you can feel through the TV screen, or I'm sure at Assembly Hall. So yeah, I don't know if we're going to mention Nate Childress again on this podcast, but so far through 2 games, the minutes he's gotten, he's looked like he's been able to hold his own and even contribute in a couple of aspects.
I would say sorry, Nate. I hope we don't, but I think I hope we honestly do, because that means we're blowing teams out and he's getting it at the end of the games. Right. So I hope we talk about Nate again, because it'd be fun if we could like blow out Purdue.
Switch gears real quick. Yeah, we're just gonna have to clip that part out. Yeah, that's not happening. Marshall comes to town. The Thundering Herd, led by Dan D'Antoni, should be a familiar surname for NBA fans out there. Marshall comes to Bloomington Saturday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. Again, it is a BTN game. So we've got the primetime slot Saturday night on Big Ten Network, because for some reason, the Big Ten doesn't play football in primetime on Saturdays. especially on rivalry week. Kevin Warren, maybe something you want to fix. Wayne Randazzo and Trent Meacham have the call. It won't be Steven Bardo. So I know, just based on our mentions, that is a point of rejoice for Hoosier Nation.
I thought Steve Bardo.
I thought he was fine in the Jackson State game.
Yes.
We're not going to nitpick.
But he couldn't pick sides in Jackson. He's not going to.
We're not going to nitpick.
He's not going to be biased for Jackson State. Who is going to be biased for Jackson State other than Deion Sanders? It's like what are we talking here? Like, we're setting the bar so low. At least he didn't root for Jackson State on the broadcast, and he's employed by the Big Ten with one Big Ten team.
Yeah. His commentary on the Trey Galloway flagrant against St. John's was irreprehensible. I mean, Steven Bardo, it is a normal basketball play.
Yeah, sure.
And every replay I'm watching with my brother as we're watching that game, I'm like, I'm seeing a pretty clear-cut flagrant here.
Yeah, this is like he literally pulls the guy. He doesn't do anything. What do you mean? A guy goes from completely vertical to completely horizontal because he just decides to do that. Like,
I don't know what he was watching there.
I don't know.
Anyway, so no Bardo for this Marshall game. The IU Syracuse game is on ESPN too, so that won't happen either. Not sure what's going to happen after that contest. It's the final game of the Hoosier Classic. Marshall has defeated Jackson State, and they lost at home to Louisiana. So that right there should be an indicator of exactly what you can expect out of the Thundering Herd. They do have expectations this year. I'm sorry, I need to take that back. Marshall defeated Louisiana at home. So Marshall has beaten the two teams that Indiana has beaten, Jackson State and Louisiana. But it's funny to see how different those two games are. Indiana won with defense. Marshall won by outshooting their opponent here. They beat Jackson State 80-66. They beat Louisiana 93-79. Marshall ranks 114th on KenPom. Their offense is rated 92 in the country. Their defense is 155. So it is an offense-focused team. No surprise with Dan D'Antoni as their head coach. Pace will be big. Marshall has the second fastest pace, adjusted for schedule, I should say, in the country. They like to get up and down the floor, and the head of the snake is Tavion Kinsey, a 6'5" guard who this season has averaged 19 points per game, 5 rebounds per game, and 4 assists per game. Don't overlook forward Obina Anochili Kilen, who is not a main scorer on this team, but through 5 games, he's blocked 30 shots. 6 per game, almost twice as much as Trace Jackson Davis, for example. And he has gained some notoriety at a mid-major level for being an elite shot blocker. So IU has to watch out for him. Matt, this will be an interesting matchup. KenPom has the Hoosiers winning this game 82-69. Give us your high-level thoughts on IU against Marshall on Saturday night.
I feel like they're going to score more points than that. They're a team that just scores. They just score the ball. Like, that's basically all you. I know you talked about the shot blocker, but like, I'm looking at their schedule and like, look, I know you could say the same thing about IU, but it's like Wright State, Milligan, Campbell, Jackson State, and Louisiana Lafayette. The best team they've played is Louisiana Lafayette, who we beat by like 20,
30 something. Yeah.
Yeah, like, and that was a 93-79 is like a pretty close game. Again, they let up 88 points to Wright State at home. They don't play defense, so I feel like this game, like, we're gonna score a bunch of points. They'll probably score 80. Like, I could see this game going like 90-80. And us maybe approaching covering. By the way, elite uniform matchup. Our home white versus their away greens. Gonna look like the red versus green. It's gonna be kind of a Christmassy flavor.
Okay.
It's after it's after Thanksgiving, so it's appropriate.
Okay, agreed. Completely agreed on that. Yeah.
It's appropriate. So if you would like to wear red to Assembly Hall, please do so. It's just, if you're gonna dress up as an elf, don't, because they're gonna be wearing green. Right. And you will be wearing the wrong color. So don't do that.
Santa costume, candy cane costume.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. It's fine.
Anyway, yeah, I think we got a good grasp of this matchup. Absolutely. I'm looking forward to seeing IU score some points. I mean, this is not a game where you can slack off on the offensive side of the floor. Getting up and down, that transition part of the game where I've really liked Indiana so far might need to elevate another level when you face the Thundering Herd on Saturday night. In a moment here, we're going to talk about our predictions for this contest. But first, I did want to give a social media shout out here. Lots of, interesting stuff. I saw Nick Westbrook-Ikhine put up over 100 yards on Sunday for Tennessee in their weird game against New Orleans. But with A.J. Brown hurt, Julio Jones hurt, it's Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, undrafted out of Indiana, stepping up and playing a big role for Tennessee in their march to the playoffs. But I did want to just give a shout out to our Indiana HQ team here over the course of this non-conference season so far. Jevin's done a great job going to Assembly Hall and covering the Hoosiers. Our photographer, Colin, put together an outstanding highlight tape of Xavier Johnson from the Jackson State game on Tuesday night. Make sure you head over to Indiana HQ on Twitter to take a look at Xavier Johnson going up and down the court against Jackson State. You can also find it on Instagram, Matt, where we're not Indiana HQ, but what are we?
Indiana.HQ.
Exactly. And over there, it's been uploaded to uploaded to our story as well. So all in all, our team's doing great work. Make sure you follow us for the rest of the year. Okay. Men's basketball coverage, women's basketball coverage, the Hoosiers over there doing a great job sitting firmly in the top 5. They've got a massive showdown against Stanford on Thanksgiving. I can't wait to see IU jump UConn in the women's basketball rankings with a win over Stanford. Can't wait to see that happen. What an unbelievable story that would be, considering the history and tradition and prestige of UConn women's basketball and how far IU has come over the course of the last few years. So overall, that's where you can find us on social media. Matt, as you look at this matchup, there are a couple things I wanted to highlight. Indiana's got to win the rebounding battle, and Indiana's got to win the turnover battle, because those are two things that Marshall does really well. How concerned does that make you going into this tilt on Saturday night?
I think the rebounding is a concern because, again, this is a team that could shoot. And if you shoot and you go out to get a rebound and you don't get the rebound, there's usually an opportunity to shoot the ball again. And you don't want to give this team a second chance at all. So rebounding is important to me. Turnovers, I think the turnovers for Marshall is a combination of they've played some awful teams. And when they play as fast as they do, and they let you play as fast as they let you, other teams, especially when they don't play well, are going to turn over the ball because they're not great and not used to playing that fast. They get sped up. I use a team that likes to play with pace anyways, so they're going to be comfortable with that. Again, this is not like they're not throwing a press at you, right? They're not forcing you to faster. They're just kind of letting you by, maybe sending some more people towards the glass to get offensive rebounds, kick back out to shooters. Okay, you get a rebound, you got a numbers break, right? And like it's that kind of speed, that kind of speeding up of the game that Marshall offers you that I feel like IU is going to be comfortable with, as long as Race Thompson isn't throwing it into 3 people on the fast break this next time, which I'm assuming he won't, and we'll be fine. And we should have a ton of fast break points at the end of the day.
Yeah, those are all teaching moments, ideally, in the grand scheme of things. I did want to point out that, against Jackson State, Marshall had 9 turnovers. Indiana had 11. Against Louisiana, Marshall had 10 turnovers. Indiana had 27. Okay. So IU has shown against similar opponents a less competent time in holding on to the basketball. So that's something that I know Hoosier fans will want to see Mike Woodson and the staff fix going into this game. Marshall gets their hands in the passing lanes. They're responsible with the basketball. So IU has to watch out as far as that area is concerned. So all in all, keep those 2 stats in the back of your mind as you're watching this IU Marshall game, the rebounding battle, turnover battle. If IU can win those, that's going to be a really good sign for the Hoosiers in this game. You're probably going to think of that and say, well, it can't be that hard. And it's not that hard. Indiana is still probably going to be a 13 or 14 point favorite, but those are two areas where Marshall could have an advantage. So, Matt, as you look at this game, Ken Pom, again, they favor IU to win this one by 13 points, 82-69. They give Indiana an 88% chance of winning this contest. It's at Assembly Hall, where Indiana's gone 5-0 so far. Who wins? And give me a score line.
IU 92. Marshall 76.
There you go. Okay, so got to keep an eye out for that Vegas line here. If if it's like 16.5 or something, that might be a problem. But if it's a 12 or 13, then Matt's saying Indiana will exceed expectations. I think Indiana is going to be able to control this game a little bit more defensively. I'm going to say there are fewer points scored than expected. I do think Indiana will get to the 80 mark, but I think Marshall's going to have a tough time. I've got IU winning 81-62, a little bit lower scoring than computers expect, but I think I started this by saying, look, if IU's first in the nation at anything through 5 games, that means there's something legitimate there. So I think IU's going to hold down Marshall's defense just a little bit and keep the Thundering Herd off the scoreboard. But hey, they're no joke, right? Having a coach like Dan D'Antoni, who's been there for, I think, 7 years now. He's led Marshall to an NCAA tournament victory more recently than IU has had when Marshall beat Wichita State back in 2018. So they're no joke. So they're definitely a game you have to watch out for. By the way, Mike Woodson and Dan D'Antoni have a connection. When Dan D'Antoni resigned in the 2011-12 season for the Knicks, when Mike D'Antoni was let go, Woodson, who is an assistant on that staff, slid in to become the interim head coach and actually led the Knicks to a pretty good finish at the end of that season. So there's a little backstory there. I'm sure that Woodson and D'Antoni have a good relationship. It's probably why this game is on the schedule here to wrap up the Hoosier Classic. So, Matt, as we wind down here, any final thoughts? I know IU basketball has gotten off to a good start. We've covered a wide gamut of things as far as the basketball program is concerned. Anything else on your mind?
Well, one, I'd like to take back my current thoughts on Michigan, as they are. Oh, they beat Tarleton State, Tarleton Texans, the Tarleton Texans, who are 1-4. They beat them at home by 11, and it was closer than 11 points. Tarleton brought this pretty close at one point. They're coming in last in the Big Ten. I want to apologize to Ant Wright for everything he has to do.
No.
They're the IU football basketball, and I apologize.
Boy. That escalated quickly. I know some of you might be saying, hey, they're not talking about football. Look, we know what you guys want to listen to right now. We know what you guys want to hear. Rivalry week is always great. Can't wait to see all the big matchups coming up this weekend. I'm just going to say, assuming Ohio State wins and Alabama and Georgia, whatever, we can discuss that. I think the 4 teams that right now deserve playoff spots are Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, and Cincinnati. And if Alabama loses, I think Notre Dame should slide in. Like, I don't think it's that complicated. They got to just go with it. I don't think Oklahoma State can do enough. I don't think anyone else can do it. If Michigan beats Ohio State, I think Michigan should be in the college football playoff, assuming Michigan wins the Big Ten title. So That's my 2 cents on where things stand there. But that about wraps it up for episode 227 of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support. Thank you to our live audience. You're all beautiful people. To hear more fantastic episodes like the one you heard today, be sure to follow us at Indiana HQ to make sure you don't miss any in the future. You can also go to our website, indianahq.com, to find it all in one place. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we will see you next time.